Hey folks, LA Little here with TA Today. I'm going to go over what was happening today. Today was a big day. You had a lot of events. In particular, you had the Fed. Then you had the earnings, mega cap earnings after the market close. It looked like it was going to be a big volatility day as a result of that, and turned out not to be. But what's interesting is that we got up and hit 7K on the S&P 500. We've been trying to get there, and boom, hit it on the very open. Had three long tails, topping tails on 10-minute charts. They sold it first 30 minutes, and it was down from there, and never got back up there. So let's look at all that. Let's see what happened today, and let's think about where we're going as a result of this. I want to start with Bitcoin, though, because Bitcoin, to me, looks like it's in trouble again. And you know, the writing is not on the wall yet, but it's getting there. So I've got this bearish retest regen. Okay, so a bearish retest regen is when you get under it. That's what this arrow tells you, is that you broke a swing point low. You broke this one. You got underneath it, and now you're coming back up to see if that breakout was real. In other words, is it going to continue? That's what you're asking. That's a bearish retest, regenerate, and that's the idea. And so the odds favor it to always regenerate on a first retest. The longer you go without a retest, the higher the probability that you're going to regenerate as a result. So given what we have here, this is the retest, and it's doing a full retest regen. That's normal. Anywhere up in this top third is normal. This is where you should expect it to go to. What you're always looking at with neoclassical was, what do you expect and what does it do? And so we expect that it can get up there, and it has. Now the question is can it get up higher? And I'm doing this on 128. It's about it looks like about 7:45 Pacific time. And Bitcoin this evening is down around 88.2. And so it's dropped, you know, I don't know, 700 points or so. And it's, you know, I mean, 700 points is nothing on this. But the issue here is that this thing is probably going to roll back over because it was unable to get over it. And if it does, right, and if it gets underneath here, it will be regenerating to the downside. Now, why is that a big deal? Because if you look over here on the the weekly, on the weekly you have this huge swing point here that has both a low and a high because it was so wide. There was a test of it once that failed, right? Look at the volume here and look at the volume of that test. So it went up, it tested, that's on this bar here, couldn't get over it, fell back down, sold off hard, about 8,000 points, about 10,000 from here, right? 10 or 11, actually about 12. And now it's bouncing. That's this little bounce that we got going on here on the retest regen. If this rolls back over, well, where's it going to go? Right? Well, the only logical place that I can see is, I mean, you could potentially get a little support there, but more than likely it's going after this. And what is that? Well, that's 80. That's where we were before. You break that, you go after 74. What is 74? That's your monthly swing point low. So if you break a monthly and you break a weekly, you got some serious problems. And so although I don't expect this to just cascade straight down, and I don't know exactly how far it would go because you've got a lot of other stuff going on. In particular, like I just said, this has never been tested, right? And so when it does get back here, you can expect that they're probably going to buy it somewhere in the top third. And so that's probably going to be a nice place to try and pick this up, somewhere down here in the $70,000 range probably. So we'll have to see, you know, but first of all, do we get a regenerate to the downside? That's Bitcoin. Let's go to the MAGS, because the MAGS is the other big one. So the MAGS is the top 7 tech stocks. 3 of them reported today. You had Microsoft, you had Meta, and you had Tesla. Now, Microsoft got hit hard, and they were down about 7% after hours. Meta, opposite, up about 7%. And Tesla was up about 2 to 3%. I think it ended up about 2% higher after hours. And so net, you got a little bit of a gain, but this is MAGS as a group, and what have they done? They've come back up, and what are they doing? They're doing a test on these two swing point lows and that swing point high. So they're trying to get over the swing point high. And if we look at the volume on that one, it's this volume here. You're testing it with less volume, right? That's a test failure. That should roll back to the downside. That's what should happen tomorrow. That's a test failure. Test failure is you fell on price, you fell on volume together. The other piece of it here is the retest regen. And where did it go? It went to the top third, which is still normal. It is the second test. In this case, you've come up twice now. And the fact that you're doing that says that more than likely, the odds, let's say it this way, the odds do not favor it to regenerate to the downside. So this was a little bit more of a question mark, but this failure here today suggests that this thing's going to try and come back some. Whether it regenerates lower is a different question, but it does look like it's going to try and pull back. If we look at Meta, and Meta was up about 6-7% after hours. Meta is pushed up to, it was about 720 if I remember right, which pushed it up into this area right up here. And so what does that do for Meta? Well, it gets over the swing point high, assuming it can hold it tomorrow. So that's going to be a big deal tomorrow, is can you hold this? And then the second question is, even if you get in there, you're doing a bearish retest regen on the way back up. So, and there's actually one here as well. So, tomorrow's a big day. Can it hold over about 704 is going to be the key area. If it doesn't, right, then that's a failure to get higher on what was really good news, or at least a good reaction. Tesla looked more like a toss-up going into earnings. You kind of got, if you do the classical stuff, you could kind of say there's maybe a head and shoulders forming up here. I don't know if that's true or not. I know that if it comes back to here, they're going to buy it. Can it get in down this deep? Yeah, it can, especially if it flips around tomorrow and is unable to hold higher. You got to get back over, though. If you're looking at the top side, you got to get back over and fill this little gap that's right in here. It's about 465 where it starts. And then finally, Microsoft. Now, Microsoft, I actually played this pretty well. I was talking about this little area down here as the buy on these bullish retest regens, and back then it was the first test. And he got right into that and allowed one to buy it. He got a nice bounce up off of it, but this evening, this thing is traded back down into this area here. So if you rode that bounce, you had to take your profits somewhere on the way up. Okay, that's the way those look. Now let's use all of that. Oh, the last thing is the SOXX. This thing has been on fire. You've got the memory companies that are just knocking it out of the park. You got SanDisk still coming up this week. You had STX reported today, had a nice big pop. MU continues to pop. Memory prices are going through the roof, and these guys are making money hand over fist. Now, it's going to end at some point, but right now, they're raking it in, and this thing just continues up. You had two ABCD structures up. It knocked them both off today. So this thing, if I remember right, I think it did, 362. And so at this point, you still have a long one that's a potential. But at this point, when I look at this, it's like, okay, it's done what it's supposed to do. More than likely, you're going to get some sort of a pullback again off of this. Now, if you're one of those people that likes to draw channels, right, you could say you kind of got a channel going here, and I used to do this because, I was trying to be a classical TA guy until I discovered the neoclassical, which I've written about in the books. But, that's a pretty tight little range. So, if you're looking at that and if you believe that kind of stuff, then you'd be saying, hey, if it comes back into this area, it's a buy. I suspect it'll make it back to 350, and then we'll just have to see what it does when it gets there. It's hard to say that there's anything really bad here unless it were to get all the way back down here and be unable to hold. So that area there where you started the month off, the year off, 308, really shouldn't trade below that. So right now, these guys are gangbusters. Let's look at the indexes now. This is the key one. I'll start with the NDX first, and then we'll finish with the S&P 500. Now, if you go to the NDX and you look over here, you actually have a failure here as well. I don't have the final quotes in this evening on the volumes. Actually, I probably can pull them. Let me grab them. Yeah, here we go. So here's our data. I run my own database and my own programs. So my volumes that come in on the indexes come in a little bit late. But anyway, so now that we have it, we can see the volume here is about, let me blow this up. Looks like we have 8.1. It was 10. Well, it's a failure. I actually thought it was going to come in heavier, but it didn't. That's a test failure. So you have a test failure at the high here to get over it. Now, this wasn't a swing point over here. So, it's just a test failure of a high, but at the same time, it is a failure, and that should lead to some sort of a retrace tomorrow. As far as where it can come back to, well, you got this swing point high and this swing point high, and neither one's been tested. I would think that you try to get in, worst case, you try to get into the overlap of those. So you'll probably have a little support right in there to start with, but if it gets deeper, you got to think they're going to buy down towards this bottom down here. So anywhere from 25,650 to 25,850 is probably the ideal. But the main thing today, it failed. And that brings me to the S&P 500, because the S&P 500 has been trying to get to the 7K number. And today it got right to it, 7,228. And what did that do? Well, that got over the swing point high. And what did it do? Closed underneath it. And it looks like this volume isn't quite all there yet, but it is going to be lighter looking at SPY. And so this is going to be a test failure at the highs. And that says that this should come back down. And where can it come back down to? Well, because this high hasn't been broken, it's going to have to come down to something else. What do you have in terms of support? You really just have these volume bars here. So probably this area here, maybe down to this area there. That would be the logical place. And so that's the way that looks. All in all today, I have to say, if I'm grading it, I have to say it's a failure. You didn't get it. You didn't get what you needed. And that tells me that there's a wall of sellers up here, just as we suspected it would be. There is definitely a wall of sellers sitting up here at the top. And as soon as they got there, they started unloading, whether it was sellers taking profit, whether it was sellers shorting, whatever it was, they were selling. And more than likely, you're going to get some sort of a retrace off of this. And I would say that the first area that makes sense is the top of that tail there, which is around 6900. Let's see what the number is, 6910. So that's where we're sitting, folks. I'd love to hear your comments about what you think. A lot happening elsewhere. You can't cover everything, but you got gold skyrocketing, silver skyrocketing. You got bonds trying to break down and rates going up. You've got the dollar, got a little bit of a bounce today. I mean, myriad of stuff going on. Those were the most important pieces today. Tomorrow you got Apple, you got a lot more earnings. And I don't think Apple's going to be able to do the trick. I still think they have a chance to try and go test again in the morning. But I suspect it's going to fail, and we're going to see this thing come back down. That's where we're at. Have a great one. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.